Yeah.
Okay. Today we're going to talk about the challenges in Europe. So the main question is, what do what do they mean to young people in Europe? So our first theme we want to discuss is the opportunities and challenges of a multilingual Europe. To get started, we wanted to ask if who is here who speaks more than one language?
I think all of us speak more than one language.
Yeah. So, which languages do you speak then?
Yeah, for example, I speak German as well and English. We teach it on school, and also Arabian. I have learned that in study, but only the basics.
I've learned Italian and French at school, but it's just the basics because I don't usually use it throughout the day.
I speak German, it's my mother language, and I also learned at school English, Latin and Spanish.
And I speak German, of course, English, French and a little bit of Spanish.
I speak German as well, mother tongue, and then I learned English in school and a little bit of French, and I learned Latin, but yeah, I don't speak it because it's a dead language.
Yeah, I speak German too, of course, and English and a bit French. Yeah. Where did you learn the languages?
I think most of us learned the languages in school
Yeah.
and from movies or books or
Yeah, I also learned the basics in school, and with the internet and movies and news and Twitter or something like that, then you get to read it every day and then you learn it by doing it.
Does somebody have family members in another country or something like that? Or friends?
No.
Nobody? Okay.
My cousin lives in Mexico, but she speaks only German with us. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a friend in Spain. I met her at a school exchange.
Ah, that's cool. So the next question, apart from traveling, how useful have your multilingual abilities been in your life? And have your multilingual abilities been useful in your life?
Yeah, most of the entertainment industry is English dominated. So if you watch movies, they come out first in English, so it's easier to watch them, and they also are sometimes better. So I think you can enjoy entertainment industry more if you can speak English, and also you have more access to other things like English podcasts, English music. So it's entertainment is really good if you can speak more languages.
Before my studies, I worked at a big company in the sales department, and there I had customers from France and from Spain and Hungary, and so I have to speak English or French with them because they aren't able to speak German. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah, sure.
And although it's connected to traveling, this internship here at the NCRE at the university is also only possible because we can speak English.
Yeah, that's right. So what does multilingual Europe mean to you?
Multilingual Europe means for me that it's just full of opportunities, and the languages that we have in Europe just show the differences between all of our member states of the European Union and of the continent. And so I think that it's just a beautiful thing because we keep these languages, we all keep parts of our own culture, and I think it's just an appreciation of the languages.
Yeah, for me it means that every part of Europe has a different language, and so if you want to travel somewhere else, then you have sometimes to learn the basics of the language. So, for example, if you travel to Italy, it's not always that the people there can speak English, so you have to learn at least some basics to get groceries or to ask for the way. So you have to learn new things if you visit other countries.
Yeah, maybe it's about also protecting minority languages, not just the main languages, the popular languages. So yeah, there's a cultural richness, I think.
I think it's also fascinating that in Europe we have so much countries with different languages, and in English we have one language that united us for communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the opportunities of the multilingual Europe in your opinion?
I think people appreciate it if you learn a new language. So if you learn Spanish and you visit Spain, then you form a bond with the people who speak Spanish as well. And I think it creates an opportunity to create friendship with people, even though you don't know the language that good, because people appreciate it very much if you learn the language. Yeah.
And if you speak the foreign language, I think you get a better look into the country and not just the tourism stuff. And yeah.
Yeah.
And also, different languages create different music and culture. So if you compare German rap and French rap, it's completely different, and it's interesting as well.
Yes, so it's like that that the language is like the key to the culture, I think.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And on the other hand, what are the challenges?
I think in some countries it's not. Some people don't speak English, and they of course don't speak German. So sometimes it's hard to communicate with people in some regions. So that is a challenge. But I mean, we can also communicate in other ways than talking. So it's not a big challenge. Yeah.
For me, a challenge could also be the different dialects or the different education levels when you use the language.
That's a point, right? And maybe it's a bit difficult to bring together the different opinions of the different little countries, like in politics, and to have a common politic.
Yeah, I think it's to add to that. I think in politics it's way easier to speak in your own language and to bring over your opinion in your own language. And I don't know if a translator can translate it that well, so your whole rhetoric comes. So your political opponent or
You mean something gets lost when you speak
Yeah,
German
genau,
and the
yeah.
translator?
And it could also get very easy to misunderstandings.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So the next question: Are the different languages a barrier for integrated Europe? What do you think?
Just like Fabi said, maybe it can be a barrier in terms of politics, that there are some misunderstandings that actually wouldn't have been there if we would speak all one language perfectly. But on the other side, I don't think that it really is a barrier, because normally we have a common language as English, and most of us just know the basics. So maybe it was a barrier in the past, but nowadays I think we can manage pretty good with English throughout the day.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So I think too.
I'm not sure about that, but before 20 years ago, I'm not sure about this English, okay. We have no English in the school, and the politics have also communicate. So I think today it's better because we have the better knowledge about English or other
But
languages.
20 years ago, I think only the well-educated persons learned English, and so they can
Yes.
communicate. But nowadays, it's easy for everyone,
Yes.
except maybe grannies or something like that, don't know, to communicate with the other countries. And yeah, it's really good.
What I also want to add is that in school, if you learn Spanish or French, then often during the school time, the students go to the other country to visit it, and so I think the fact that they learn another language leads to them learning about the other culture. So if they wouldn't have learned French because they had the same language, then they wouldn't even visit it.
Yeah.
So I think that leads to more friendships and integration.
So is English sufficient for the communication within Europe?
I think mostly yes, because nowadays many people speak English and can communicate. It's maybe just not that easy for older people or some people who didn't learn English in school. So yeah.
I think in the younger generation it's not a problem anymore. So I think English is sufficient.
Yeah, that's what I think too. You can see it in social media, so I think that's a good example. Yeah, we all know the English words we use and our teenage language. Yeah. So let's start the next theme. We will discuss Europe and religion. Ouch.
Yeah. Our next theme we want to discuss is Europe of regions. In Europe there are many different countries, but through its history of ever-changing borders and other factors, there also exist different regions. To get started, we want to know what region or what regions do you feel you belong to? Let's start with me. Apart from my hometown, I think I belong to the region of the state Baden-Württemberg, which is a federal state of Germany. And I also belong to the region around the city of Karlsruhe, which is in the southwest of Germany. Yeah, Mona?
So for me, I feel like Swabian. That's in South Germany, and I think it's because of the dialect. So I feel connected to this region.
Yeah, for me it's also Swabian, because Mona said it. It's a region in the south of Germany where I live at, and also about the dialect. But I also feel a little bit like a Bavarian because I live in the federal state of Bavaria. So yeah.
Yeah, I belong to Baden-Württemberg too, and I'm coming from Freiburg, you know that, and so I feel like a Badener and not like a Swabian. Yeah.
I think I belong to Baden-Württemberg and I feel like a Swabian.
Yeah, for me it's practically the same as the broader region. It's also the federal state Baden-Württemberg, and then as a smaller region, Swabian, or even my hometown and the small villages there.
Did your parents and grandparents also live in the same region as you live now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that the different regions are a challenge for the German country, or do you think there are conflicts between these regions?
In general, I think that of course it can be a source of problems or conflict, because it's just like in a group, the more regions or the more people you have, the more opinions you have, and therefore everyone has different aims, what they want to achieve in the future. And so I think that of course it's more difficult to find a common voice or to come to a conclusion. And that's just what happens in Spain with Catalonia, I think,
Yeah.
because they're driving for their independence. But in general, like of course conflict, yes, but also it can be enriching because there are so many other opinions you normally wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do you-
think.
yeah.
Sorry.
Mm.
The relationship is quite good. It's more like joking about each other, but not really serious conflicts.
Where do these jokingly conflicts come from?
Sorry?
Yeah, okay.
I think from the history.
From the history, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe also from the different languages, because the idioms are different in each region, and some sound better, some sound worse. So, yeah, but it's also only jokingly. Yeah.
I think in Germany it's not a problem with the regions, but we can see in the world when the regions not clear market, then it gives great problems. You can see it on the Crimea, you know,
Yeah.
Ukraine and Russia, or actually Pakistan and India. I think Kashmir, this region is not
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
But these kind of invisible borders that exist in between countries aren't that serious in Europe, except for maybe Catalonia and yeah, maybe in Scotland, the Scottish people feel more Scottish than British. Yeah.
Or South Tyrol in Italy.
Yeah.
They don't want to belong to Italy. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there is a loss of regional cultural identity in recent times because of globalization?
Yes, I think there's a loss because, yeah, when I go to the supermarket here in New Zealand, I see the same groceries like in Germany. So I think it's, yeah, there are many similarities today. So
In each region, so it's not as
yeah,
unique anymore.
yeah,
Yeah, I think so too. I see it in the language. So people no longer stay their whole life in their region, like your grandparents and parents did. And with that, the idiom of people gets lost because their kids don't speak only with their parents and their parents' idiom, but also with the new idiom of the region. And so they don't really have one idiom, but a mixture of many idioms, and then it's not really the same idiom anymore, and then it gets lost. And I also think that in the food industry or restaurant industry, the restaurants in cities become more and more homogeneous, and yeah, that's also one thing I see, that it's getting lost in recent times.
I think in food, you can see it in New Zealand, we have the culture fruit here, but it gives food from all over the world.
Yeah.
And for me, it's an addition to the culture.
Yeah, I don't think it's
And so I
there
think-
that there's
Yeah,
food of every nation and country. I just think it's that the regional dishes get a little bit less appreciated in recent times. Yeah. Do you think the European youth is supporting regional identity, or is it becoming more and more irrelevant?
I think in some parts the youth is supporting the regional identity, because when you look at Bavaria, at Oktoberfest, all the people who go there wear the traditional clothing of Bavaria, Dirndl and Lederhose, and so I think there is not a loss of
Yeah.
this.
And in the language, what do you think about language?
the dialects I think are not spoken very much, so
Yeah.
And you learn in school that you have to speak clear German and not
Yeah.
your dialect.
Yeah.
idiom,
yeah, that's
so
right.
we call it Hochdeutsch.
Yeah. Do you see your future in your region? So do you think you will stay there your whole life, or do you think I'll have to move somewhere else later in my life?
I think I'm gonna stay in my region. There's my family, there are my friends, and I feel very connected to that, so I just go on vacation in other lands. Yeah.
Teresa?
I also agree to that. I like my hometown and there's good economy, so I can find a job there, so that's also good. And yeah, my family, my friends are there, so I think I will stay there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you free too?
Yeah.
Okay. Do the different regions compete on an international level or on a national level or even on a European level? So do you think your region has competitors that people from your region move to because of a better job market or better salaries, better living standards, or don't you see that?
In some points, I think yes, because when you look at Germany, there are some good federal states. When you say good, with economy or living standard, they are higher educated and something like this. And I think it could be that some people from the eastern countries of Germany, eastern federal states,
Yeah.
can come and to the other states. So, but I don't know if it's this in reality. Don't know.
Yeah, I
But
think it's
I can
you're right.
imagine that.
In the news, it comes sometimes that many people move from east to west, especially the young people, because in West Germany there are more jobs and better salaries. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Would we have this discussion in Ukraine or Bosnian or something? The states, we have the same meaning. That they say, "Oh, I won't live in Ukraine or Bosnia." So you're right. They go to more than the Western states to live there, maybe for the better job market.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Okay. The next theme we want to discuss is Europe East and West. Of course, it's not as big as a topic as it was 30 years ago, but people still think in these terms. To get started, do you still think in these terms, Europe East and West?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I think we agree that we all think in these terms. And where would you draw the line? What countries do you think are still Eastern Europe, and which countries are Western Europe? If you maybe can look at this map and talk about what countries are Eastern Europe and Western Europe. So maybe Thomas, what countries, if you go from the top, from the north to the south, what countries of Europe would you put in the Western category?
I would make the border maybe between Poland, Belarus, or Ukraine. So Poland is for me a Western state.
Poland, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Teresa, what do you think about that?
For me, the Western countries are Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland. And then you go down Germany, Austria, Italy. That's for me the line.
Yeah, okay. And Thomas, you said Poland belongs to Western Europe.
Why do you think so?
It's such a feeling. Don't know. Poland is too close to Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the Czech Republic is also close to Germany.
Yeah.
So
It's also
Czech
Western.
is
also
also
Western.
Western. Okay. And
Austria too.
okay. And Larissa and Stephanie, do you think so too?
I would
Do
agree.
you agree with Thomas or with Teresa?
With Teresa, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe to make it a little bit more clearer, how would you define Western Europe? What makes a country Western, or what aspects feed into this?
I think in the Western countries there's a little bit more economy and maybe also the better living standards. Not that much poverty sometimes. And yeah.
Yeah, good education, but not in all
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would think that there's a bit better infrastructure
Yep.
in Western Germany, especially the train, with trains. And how would you define Eastern Europe? Or maybe compare what's the difference between Western Europe and Eastern Europe?
I think just like Teresa said, probably the living standard.
Mhm.
But to be honest, I've never been in Eastern Europe, so
Okay,
maybe just a
maybe that's
stereotype
also a
I'm
good
thinking
question.
of.
Who here was in Eastern Europe before?
I was in Hungary,
Okay.
but I just was there on vacation, so I
Yeah.
don't know really. So
I think for me, it's also a an aspect because the Western Europe, the Western countries of Europe are vacation countries where you go on vacation and you don't travel in the East. Yeah, so that's for me an aspect. And there's also the definition of Central Europe. How would you define Central Europe, and which countries do you think belong to Central Europe?
For me, I think Central Europe would be Germany, France, and United Kingdom.
Okay.
I don't know why, probably because I think of the Central Europe as in like who has the most power in the economics. I don't know why, but
Okay.
just
I also think that that Central Europe has the highest living standards. It's like I think we counted Spain and Portugal to Western Europe, but Spain doesn't have as good as a job market as Germany or France. And yeah, that's also a difference we wanted to discuss. What do you count to north of Europe, and what do you think is south of Europe? Which countries? Where would you draw the line in this
North
case?
Europe and the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Iceland. For me, also a little bit United Kingdom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And south of Europe? Everything below that, or would you start somewhere else?
Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece,
Okay.
Croatia, also a little bit, yeah.
Okay. And the comparison between East and Western Europe, do you think that young people see a difference between these two regions, East and West, than the older generation? So, for example, I think that my parents had the Soviet Union in their heads when they thought of Eastern Europe, but the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore and we never experienced it. For me, the differences show more in the job market or in the living standards. But do you think that you have another image of Eastern Europe than your parents do? Okay.
I think you said that, and I remember in the school we've heard much about the history from Germany, the DDR,
Yeah.
and the Soviet Union too. And I think I lost my English. I think in the same way that the older generation, because I've heard that in the school
Okay.
a little bit, not so much, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's okay. And do you still think in East and West Germany? Do you think there's still a difference between Western Germany and Eastern Germany, because of its history, and
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of difference between Western and Eastern Germany. In Western Germany, we have more economy, maybe also the better economy, and the living standard is also higher. And yeah, the salaries are higher than in Eastern Germany, and yeah, more people from Eastern Germany move to Western Germany, and it's this way, not the other way
Yeah.
around. So
okay?
yeah.
But you wouldn't draw the line in between Germany.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Next topic.
Yeah, so let's start the next topic. The next topic is a current and important one all over Europe. In the media and politics, it's Europe and migration. And with migration, we mean the most recent migration crisis. So, do you think the most recent migration crisis had a negative effect on the European unity?
Yeah, I think so. migration crisis led to the rise of many right-wing parties in every country of Germany, I think. And most of these right-wing parties are also anti-Europe. So you can see it in Great Britain, what stance some parties have on Europe. And I think that has led to many people criticizing the EU because of their handling of the refugee crisis.
I think the migration crisis had shown us that the European Union has not one speaker. Some states have taken refugees in a huge number, and other states have made borders, like Hungary.
Yeah.
And so we have seen we are not united.
Yeah.
Such name, European Union, told us.
Yeah,
And it also showed that, sorry.
yeah, I just wanted to say you can see there are different opinions and yeah, just different ways to think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, do you think the most recent migration crisis could have been handled better? And if yes, what could have been handled better?
I think that's what Thomas said, that like every country just should take a number that fits to its population from the refugees, because a lot of countries in Europe or who are in the European Union just take the advantages, and then when there comes like a harder time or when there comes a problem, they just sort of bail out.
Yeah.
And they just don't carry the weight with the other countries. And so I think Europe is sort of sometimes, of course, united, but then when the crisis come, then you just see that Europe isn't that united as you always think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think when there were one leader from the European Union and this person decided, yeah, every country had to take some refugees, so it would be clear and there wouldn't have been such countries like Hungary who said, no, we don't want to take them, or something like this. It would be easier if there was one leader of the European Union.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point. Are there any other opinions?
I think that some countries suffered more than others, like Italy, because of their location. And I think it's responsible that other countries had to be more responsible and take more actions to help these countries like Italy and Greece. Yeah.
So, which issues are the most urgent to address in your opinion?
I think for refugees or migration people, it is the language.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are the challenges mostly, because if you speak the language, you can make a good education. It's the key for everything in the country, I think.
Yeah, I think too that education is a basic thing you need to live here, and maybe it's also a part to teach the refugees how our culture is and how do we think, how our values are, so they can understand our way to act, and that would be more easier for them to understand things.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I think it's also important that we, in the free time, we integrate them in sports and
Mm-hmm.
what we can do in the free time, yes. So not only work for the refugees. Yeah,
Yeah.
also fun.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, don't separate the refugees in ghettos or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. What is the role of youth in integrating migrants?
I think the youth is more open-minded maybe because there's a new culture coming to Europe, to Germany, and so they maybe be more interested in this and to learn about them. And yeah, maybe it's easier for us, the youth, to integrate the refugees. Yeah, because we also speak English and some of the refugees also, and yeah.
And also many of the refugees are younger and in our age, so I think they can connect to us more than to the older generation.
Yeah.
I also think that the role of youth regarding this refugee crisis is that we are maybe a bit better informed than some right-wing party members, and we have to get our own news and don't let our opinion change through propaganda of some right-wing parties. Yeah.
So
Okay.
start a new topic.
Then we go on to our next topic. Our first few questions were mostly about inner European topics, and our next and last topic addresses Europe and the world. To get started, do you see Europe as a global power? You can also differentiate between different areas, maybe military, economic, diplomatic. Do you think Europe is a global powerhouse in these areas?
I think Europe is a global power in economics because we have a lot of economy, we are good in exporting things, and yeah, I think here we are a global power, but I don't think that we are a military global power. Yeah, it's just every country has its own army, its own military stuff, and yeah, it's not one global power, just many small powers. Yeah.
I also think in the diplomatic area, it's not, if you watch the news, it's not the USA negotiating with all of the EUs, but with Germany or with France. I don't think that the EU is that much of a diplomatic power, but it's member states.
Yeah.
Do you think Europe should be more involved in these areas, military and diplomatic? You said they weren't that much of a power. Do you think it would be better for the world or for Europe if they were more involved?
No, I think it wouldn't be possible to get a military global power because every member state of Europe or of the EU has its own military, its own training, its own weapons. I don't know what they all have, and to get this on the one head, I don't know that this would work.
So you don't think it would be a good idea to implement a European army? Okay.
No, don't think so.
And do you think Europe should be more diplomatic? Should be a bigger power in the diplomatic area?
I think the EU could be a greater diplomatic power, but Merkel said something for the EU and Macron said something, and in the same time the others say things against that.
Okay.
I think that's the problem why the EU have not the power that should be. Yes.
Okay. So you wouldn't say that the EU, even though it's a bigger, So if you would compare the EU with the USA, do you think the USA is a bigger superpower in the world than the EU?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they're more involved in military. On economic scale, I'm not sure, but I think on diplomatics, yes, because they have a president and he just leads the nation. And even though we don't have this common voice, I think that Europe is represented by its leaders of the national states, so from Merkel and Macron. But on the other side, I can see your point, Thomas, because in Europe there's never like one conclusion, because you have always too many states bailing out or just
Yeah.
want like a special treatment.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
How would you describe the relation between Europe and the other leading international actors like USA? Do you think the relationship is good or bad, or has it changed in recent times?
I think it has changed. I think the relationship to the USA was way better when Barack Obama was president. But I think in terms with Russia, there are always times when the relationship is more tensing than in others. But generally speaking, I think with the superpowers, Europe has a good relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you view the relationship between the European Union and New Zealand?
I think it's quite good. There aren't problems, but the relation isn't really close because also of the geographical distance.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't hear anything about I didn't hear anything about the relationship between New Zealand and Germany before, and I think could be a good sign because there are no problems between each other. But last week we met the German parliamentary group who visits New Zealand regularly, and so we see that there's a connection between these two countries. But I also don't think it's our most important partner because of the geographical distance.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think the relationship is quite good because there are negotiations about a new free trade assignment or something like
Agreement,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's good.
But it's
It's
difficult to
comfortable.
trade when you are not so close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and as our last point regarding Europe and the world, if you had to convince other young people to move to Europe, what two things would you name to advertise it to other young people?
We have in the EU open borders, so you can go and visit every country you like, and we have also really good food in Europe.
Thomas?
We have the wonderful Black Forest in Baden-Württemberg, you know. We have also no speed limit on our highways.
Just in Germany.
If you like that. Yeah. Good food also.
Stephanie?
To me, it's the different culture and the food, of course.
Ilse?
I would say the bad thing is that Europe is borderless, and therefore you can just experience all the cultures that are there, because like it's just a lot of cultures on a small point. So I think it's good for traveling.
Okay. Una?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the cultural richness is very interesting in the EU, and yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that that the cities are really interesting all over Europe. Every city has its own history and all buildings and really rich history. The food, of course, and if you want to live in Europe, I think the education system is very good in most of Europe. Yeah.